when I started, some of the tasks were like basically to, talk with people who said they needed some help and figure out, how can they make metadata that's going to be able to be displayed and discovered on the portal. And some of these folks, starting at the most simple stage of the Blue Water Task Force folks of Surfrider. So they have a web page that has some locations on it and citizen and student sampling water quality, and so they wanted their information to be available. We now have that on the, I'm showing now the portal page, and you can do some searches on sources. So I just have Surfrider showing here. So basically now their information is in there, and the tool that we use to do that is the EPA Metadata Editor version 4.0. So the difference is between, the EPA has two tools right now, and 3.2 you can use for the SGDC content standard, and 4.0 is their more recent version for the ISO standards. And those require Windows, so that could be a limitation for some folks. And the, oops, I have this switched, unfortunately, but I'll fix that. So the 3.2 version for SGDC requires Access, Microsoft Access. The 4.0, they've shifted to a different, to an XML backend database, which you probably don't really have to worry about if you don't want to. So I'll just show. So basically, I started working with someone from Surfrider, and she didn't have any geospatial background. She just said, "Yeah, tell me what I need to do. How do I get this? How do I make this metadata record? What do I do?" So I scratched my head and said, "I don't know how to. Where can I? Is there a tool that can do the most simple level of information?" And I would say that this EPA Metadata Editor version 4.0 does the job. So and so it's very straightforward, I would say, relative to a lot of other things that I've looked at. There's 3 tabs, so there's not a lot of digging. And actually, the third tab is basically just if you bring in an existing XML file, some things will show up there. But all the information you need to fill out is shown on these 2 tabs. The yellow is mandatory. The green is called mandatory if applicable, which is also a little bit of a, can trip you up a little bit. Generally, I would say if you can fill those things out, it's a good idea to do so. And then blue is optional. So the, I was going to show you, here's the URL for downloading either of those tools. And the nice thing about these tools is that they've been around for a while, so they're pretty well developed, not not buggy. There's a lot of information in how to use them if you want to delve into that as well. And so they have, for example, this really nice help where you click on the thing that you're looking at. It says title, and then there is a description about what that is, and also some guidance in terms of what kind of information goes in there. It's pretty EPA specific sometimes, but for the most part, it's extremely useful. So you can also bring in, if you have an existing metadata record, so I'll bring theirs in for an example, then it will populate all of these entries. And then, for example, if you have a couple things, a couple records you need to create, then you can use the first one you create kind of as a template, and then go in and edit different components of that. And then if you want, for example, some of these things can take multiple entries. For example, digital transfer options is, how do you get the data? Where's the link? And you can add additional, if you have 3 links, then you can add additional ones. And you kind of you add them with a little plus sign, and then you page through with these arrows or little carrots. And you can also, yeah. So that's that's about it. There's one little tip and trick, particularly for the West Coast Ocean Data Portal and any other entity that uses GeoPortal, and that is this identifier, metadata identifier. So you need to, if you pulled in a record, this tool will actually create a new identifier for you. So each of your metadata records needs to have one of these, and this is like you can also create them from a website. Let's see, where is it? You just Google for UUID, and you can go to this website and create one. I'm plugging that into the chat as well. But if for example, this is one of the little gotchas that always gets me, which is, okay, I pull in a record and I modify it, but I forget to change the identifier. And then when I go to try to upload it into the portal, it doesn't see it because it now has 2 records with the same metadata identifier. So that's one little, like, don't forget to do this kind of thing. Let's see. The other thing is that they're for things like keywords, which again, this says mandatory if applicable, but I think they're really mandatory. If you want people to find your information, I think it's really helpful to have keywords and think about different ways that people might want to look for your information. So there's this tab called keywords, and it has ISO keywords, which has a default set, EPA, which is obviously their own, user keywords. And in order to put keywords into here, you have to go to the database. So there's at the top there's a menu item that says Tools, and then you select Open Database. And then you're editing this sort of back-end database, which is actually, I believe, an XML file. So you might want to add, there's one table called Contact Information. So if you click on this button that says Enable Edit Mode, then you can add entries down here at the bottom. And then let's say we finish that and we want to do keywords user. So this is where I added keywords for this particular purpose. So yeah, I think that's kind of a lot of the basic, it's pretty straightforward, and then you can save it, whatever file name you want. Another thing to remember for folks is that XML is the preferred standard output format for metadata, because then you can transfer things between different systems, and the computer can, it's a computer readable format. It's not very human readable, but there's ways to get your XML into other formats if you need to. But if you don't have an XML format and you need to bring your metadata somewhere else, you're going to have a little bit of trouble. And that was the case for like some older metadata records. Sometimes they were only in text or HTML. So.